In today's tutorial, I'm going to share the biggest secret for faster sight reading with you. This is a secret that is used by professional pianists, and it's going to work for you regardless of your level and regardless of what genre of music you like to play. Once I share this secret with you, I'm also going to show you exactly how to practice it. And if you watch this whole tutorial and you take these steps that I'm going to share with you and you implement them today, by the end of the week, you're going to notice a significant difference and improvement in your sight reading. All right, are you ready for the secret? The biggest secret for faster sight reading is recognizing musical patterns. When you see someone open up a piece of music and sight read with freedom and musicality, they are not looking at individual notes. And as long as your brain is looking at individual notes and thinking about reading music as looking at individual notes, you're never going to have that speed and freedom and fluidity in your piano playing or your sight reading. When you watch a professional do this, they are recognizing a lot of musical patterns very quickly. And this comes from practicing exactly that, the memorization and the recognition of musical patterns on a regular basis. It's kind of like when you go about learning how to read or speak the English language, right? If you want to get to the point that you can read Shakespeare, you can't just memorize the letters of the alphabet. That's not going to get you very far. You have to actually know what the different combinations of the letters mean and also what the different words are and how to string them all together. And the same is true with reading music. Think about it like the individual letters of the English language are kind of like the individual notes in a piece of music. And it's important that you learn those, but you have to take it a step further. If you think about small combinations of letters in the English language, like TH or SH, that's going to be like your intervals in music. And if you think about those short words that you start to recognize pretty quickly, like the or and, that's going to be your simple chords when you go to read music, and so on and so forth. The analogy really works for every kind of musical pattern. The very best way to learn to recognize musical patterns quickly is to spend a little bit of time each day studying them and memorizing them. If you try to recognize all of the musical patterns at once, you're likely going to be unsuccessful. And this is an area that I see most piano players struggle because they'll learn the note names well enough to start diving into some complicated pieces, but maybe they'll learn a chord here and maybe they'll learn a scale here, but they don't really spend as much time as they need to continuing to learn all of those musical patterns and committing them to memory. And so whatever level you're at, you can take this idea and you can apply it to your level. So if you are a beginner and you know that you can recognize notes, but you're not really very familiar with intervals or chords, that's your next step. If you're an advanced player and you're like, what are you talking about? I know notes, I know intervals, I know chords, then you're actually going to optimize for speed. So you can still practice recognizing those musical patterns. You might be able to recognize a lot of them, but can you recognize a lot of them very quickly? If the answer is no, and if it takes you longer than like half a second to recognize the name of an interval or to recognize the name of a chord, then you have some work that you can also do to continue to increase your fluency in the musical language. Now, the best way to go about recognizing musical patterns is to use flashcards, or as I like to call them, memory aid cards. The wonderful thing about memory aid cards is that they work for every single age of piano player and every single skill level of piano player. The idea with memory aid cards is that you start out with just a couple of them and you really work on getting familiar with them so that it becomes very easy for you to recognize the musical pattern on sight. Now you can do this with all sorts of concepts. You can do this with rhythmic patterns, you can do this with note names, you can do it with intervals, with chords, with key signatures, and so on and so forth. And after you have a couple of memorized, you simply just start adding one card at a time. And the beautiful thing about this is it doesn't take a lot of time. If you were to practice this for literally 2 minutes every single day, in a couple of weeks, you would have fluency over so many more musical patterns than you do right now. Now, I always recommend starting with rhythmic patterns and then moving on to note names. And then from note names, we go to intervals and chords and key signatures. And there's many ways that you can practice with memory aid cards because you want to practice like recognizing the note, but then also finding the note on the piano. And when it comes to chords, you want to recognize, knowing what notes are in the chord, but also if you see the notes of the chord, knowing what chord it is. I recently taught a class on this where I dove deep and I explained exactly how to study memory aid cards at all of the various levels so that you could master the concept of musical patterns. Now, in addition to that, I created an entire set of memory aid cards that are custom for the adult piano player that wants to gain more fluency with musical patterns or wants to gain more speed with their recognition of musical patterns. The memory aid cards include 17 pages of over 100 memory aid cards, and I have a 30-minute class that goes along with it where I dive in and I show you exactly how to practice the memory aid cards to get the most benefit based on your specific level. Now, you can get the memory aid cards and the video together. It's called the Patterns Bundle, and I'm going to link that in the description, and I'm also going to put it on the end screen. And I highly suggest that you go grab it right now and that you make this change in your practice so that by the end of this week, you see an improvement in the speed and fluency of your pattern recognition. It's going to help you become a much better sight reader fast. You can grab that link on the end screen right here.